The 1930s, the Soviet Union. After investigation reveals that some members of the former Bolshevik Party question Stalin's authority, and that there is a network of party members supposedly working against him, Stalin believes anyone with ties to the Bolsheviks or Lenin's government is a threat to his leadership and needs to go. He initiates the Great Purge, which starts with the arrests of party members, Bolsheviks, and members of the Red Army, and then grows to include Soviet peasants, members of the intelligentsia, and members of certain nationalities. By 1938, hundreds of thousands of people are executed, and the oppression becomes so extensive that it is damaging the infrastructure, economy, and even the armed forces of the Soviet state. The head of the NKVD, the Interior Ministry of the Soviet Union, which coordinates the purge carrying out the arrests, torture, and executions on Stalin's behalf, is Nikolai Yezhov. Nikolai Ivanovich Yezhov was born on the 1st of May, 1895 in St. Petersburg, then part of the Russian Empire. His mother was Lithuanian and worked as a maid, and his father held various jobs, including a musician, a forest warden, and the head of a brothel. Yezhov completed only a few years of elementary school before he started working as a tailor's assistant and a factory worker. Despite his short stature, standing at just 5 feet, or 151 centimeters, Yezhov was conscripted into the Imperial Russian Army in 1915 and was wounded in battle. He joined the Bolsheviks in May 1917, 6 months before the October Revolution, and fought in the Red Army during the Russian Civil War. The Russian Civil War ended in October 1922, and for the rest of the 1920s, Yezhov worked in the political system, mostly as a secretary of various regional committees of the Communist Party. He was known for his exceptionally disciplined work ethic. Yezhov started climbing the Soviet bureaucracy ranks, and by 1930, he was attending Politburo meetings, the executive committee of the Communist Party. Between 1919 and 1930, Yezhov was married to a minor Communist Party clerk, Antonina Chitova. In late 1930, he married his second wife, Yevgenia Feigenberg, who was Jewish and 9 years his junior. She was a glamorous woman, and they had an adopted daughter, Natasha, an orphan from a children's home. A contemporary described him as a small, slender man, always in a wrinkled, cheap suit and blue satin blouse, sitting quietly at the table, slightly shy, drinking little, and mostly listening with his head bowed. Despite his modest appearance, Yezhov's nature was quite different. In 1936, a prominent Bolshevik Nikolai Bukharin compared Yezhov, who had a childlike smile but a disturbing sense of humor, to cruel little boys who found pleasure in setting cats on fire and watching them suffer. Yezhov also had a voracious sexual appetite, and though popular with women who found him handsome and playful, he also had relationships with men, making him bisexual. He became notorious for organizing drinking and sexual parties with his lovers, both male and female. Despite his hedonistic lifestyle, Yezhov's personal life was plagued by significant health issues. In addition to his drinking problem, he suffered from muscle weakness, low blood count, and skin issues. Yezhov's intense dedication to his work, combined with his nervousness, quick temper, and weak physical condition, led to depression and extreme exhaustion. By the early 1930s, Yezhov was a rising star within the Communist Party, and Stalin welcomed him into his inner circle. In 1934, Yezhov was elected to the Central Committee of the Communist Party, and the following year he became a secretary of the Central Committee. Yezhov was known for his loyalty to Stalin and his administrative skills. Stalin admired Yezhov's hard work, once writing to him in August 1935, "When you say something, you always do it." As a sign of affection, Stalin gave Yezhov a nickname, "My Little Blackberry." Their relationship grew stronger, with Stalin increasingly trusting and depending on him. Stalin ensured Yezhov's dedication was rewarded with various retreats and vacations when his health required it. In 1934, when Yezhov was exhausted and dealing with skin infections, Stalin sent him to Central Europe for high-end therapeutic treatment. Stalin's message to the embassy in Berlin read, I ask you to pay very close attention to Yezhov. He's seriously ill, and I cannot estimate the gravity of the situation. Give him help and cherish him with care. He is a good man and a very precious worker." Stalin did not keep Yezhov close simply because he enjoyed his company. Yezhov was instrumental in Stalin's consolidation of power, effectively enabling his rise as the unchallenged dictator of the Soviet Union. Upon Stalin's rise to power, some members of the former Bolshevik party began to question his authority. An investigation revealed a network of party members supposedly working against Stalin, including several of Stalin's rivals. By the mid-1930s, Stalin believed anyone with ties to the Bolsheviks or Lenin's government was a threat to his leadership and had to be removed. A major turning point for Yezhov came after the 1934 murder of Sergei Kirov, a leading Bolshevik in Leningrad. Though the man who killed Kirov acted alone, Stalin used the event as an excuse for more purges and chose Yezhov to lead them. Yezhov made false accusations in the Kirov murder case against opposition leaders Lev Kamenev, Grigory Zinoviev, and their followers. Just hours after Kirov's murder, Yezhov was directing the NKVD to arrest suspects listed by Stalin. He initially worked with Genrik Yagoda, the nominal head of the NKVD, to prosecute old Bolsheviks Grigory Zinoviev and Lev Kamenev on fake charges of a plot to kill Stalin. Yezhov even began writing a book about this supposed conspiracy, which Stalin edited, though he never finished it. The case led to the first of the Moscow show trials in August 1936. The evidence against the accused was entirely fabricated. Yezhov used torture methods like sleep deprivation, heat exhaustion, and threats to their families to force confessions. Despite promises to spare their lives, Zinoviev, Kamenev, and their associates were executed after being found guilty. Yagoda kept the bullets that killed Zinoviev and Kamenev as souvenirs. Yezhov's working relationship with Yagoda did not last long. Yagoda was quickly falling out of favor with Stalin, who even threatened to punch him in the nose if he did not improve his work. In September 1936, Yezhov replaced Yagoda as the head of the NKVD, with his first task from Stalin being to investigate and prosecute Yagoda. Yezhov even blamed Yagoda for an attempt to assassinate him by sprinkling mercury around his office. Yagoda was also accused of murdering the famous writer Maxim Gorky and his son. It is claimed that Yezhov personally tortured Yagoda to get his confessions, and Yagoda was just the first of many to die under Yezhov's orders. One of the accused, Yuri Pyatakov, even offered to execute all those sentenced in his trial, including his ex-wife, to prove his innocence, but almost all the accused were executed anyway. The Soviet forces soon faced a similar fate, and following Stalin's orders, Yezhov arrested almost the entire Soviet high command. This included Stalin's old rival from the Russian Civil War, Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky. Yezhov personally oversaw Tukhachevsky's interrogation, and as a result of the brutal torture, Tukhachevsky confessed to being a German fascist agent, claiming he worked with Nikolai Bukharin to overthrow Stalin and seize power. He was then tried by a special military tribunal, found guilty, and sentenced to death. Yezhov witnessed as Tukhachevsky was shot in the back of the head. Immediately afterward, Yezhov reported to Stalin, who was eager to know Tukhachevsky's final words. Yezhov replied, "The snake said he was dedicated to the motherland and comrade Stalin. He asked for clemency, but it was obvious he was not being straight. He hadn't laid down his arms." Yezhov's NKVD decimated the Red Army, executing 3 out of 5 marshals, 15 out of 16 commanders, 60 out of 67 corps commanders, and all 17 commissars. The NKVD was completely under Stalin's control, and this brutal purge ensured that any resistance to his rule was crushed. The Great Purge affected all levels of society and professions, targeting individuals randomly. Yezhov admitted and even embraced this randomness. He once said, "There will be some innocent victims in this fight against fascist agents. We are launching a major attack on the enemy. Better that 10 innocent people suffer than 1 spy escapes." When you chop wood, chips fly. On the 30th of July 1937, Yezhov proposed Order Number 00447 to the Politburo, calling for mass executions and deportations. This led to hundreds of thousands of deaths and arrests, driven by personal vendettas and arbitrary reasons. Shortly after, in August 1937, Yezhov signed Order Number 00485. Which laid the foundation for the systematic elimination of the Polish minority in the Soviet Union between 1937 and 1938. Yezhov's role in the mass terror operations was marked by his sadism, as he often supervised and took part in interrogations and executions. On one occasion, when Nikita Khrushchev, then a political commissar and close advisor to Stalin, visited Yezhov's office, he noticed bloodstains on the floor and Yezhov's jacket. Yezhov nonchalantly remarked, "One can be proud of those stains. This is the blood of the enemies of the revolution." Many prisoners were brutally beaten to death by Yezhov's NKVD, with some beaten so severely that their eyes were dislodged from their sockets. These deaths were often recorded as heart attacks. Yezhov left a disturbing mark on the NKVD's crimes, with his specially designed execution room. It had a sloping concrete floor leading to a bullet-absorbing log wall, and cleaning equipment, functioning like a slaughterhouse to efficiently carry out mass executions. The widespread terror and savagery under his command led to him being notoriously known as the Bloody Dwarf. During the peak of his career, amid the chaos, Yezhov and his family lived a lavish lifestyle. He, his wife Yevgenia, and their adopted daughter Natasha lived in a luxurious dacha with a cinema, tennis court, and staff. Yezhov cared deeply for Natasha, teaching her to ride a bicycle and looking after her like any devoted father. In 1937 and 1938 alone, over 1.3 million people were arrested, and around 682,000 were executed for crimes against the state. The Gulag population surged by approximately 685,000, nearly tripling its size within 2 years. At least 140,000 of these prisoners, and likely many more, died from malnutrition, exhaustion, and the harsh conditions in the camp. After the Great Purge, with Stalin's enemies either in gulags or dead, Yezhov's usefulness to Stalin decreased. Moreover, Yezhov stepped over the line when on several occasions he boasted about his power, claiming the Politburo was in his hands. In April 1938, Stalin promoted Yezhov to the People's Commissar for water transport. 2 months later, Yezhov's downfall accelerated when Genrik Lyushkov, the NKVD commander in the Soviet Far East, defected to Japan. This defection convinced Stalin that Yezhov was losing control over the NKVD. In August 1938, Lavrentiy Beria was appointed to assist Yezhov with the NKVD, and by autumn of the same year, several of Yezhov's close colleagues were arrested. Fearing his end, Yezhov fell into a deep depression, and in order to protect her, he asked his wife for a divorce. Yevgenia began writing desperate letters to Stalin, as she was vulnerable due to her many lovers and the arrests of the people close to her. Fearing interrogation by the NKVD, Yevgenia wrote to Yezhov, asking him to provide poison, and suggesting that he send an agreed signal, the statuette of a dwarf, when her arrest was imminent. Yezhov complied. In November 1938, when he sent her a signal, she committed suicide by overdosing on sleeping pills. In November 1938, Yezhov was officially replaced by Beria as head of the NKVD. Ignored by Stalin and avoided by former colleagues, Yezhov stopped working, drank heavily, and engaged in bisexual orgies in his Kremlin apartment. In April 1939, Yezhov was arrested, brutally tortured, and forced to confess to everything he was accused of. This included official incompetence, theft of government funds, and treasonous collaboration with German spies and saboteurs. Beyond these political crimes, he also confessed to sexual promiscuity, including homosexuality. In February 1940, Yezhov was brought before the military collegium, just like his predecessor Yagoda. He maintained his love for Stalin until the end. Yezhov denied being a spy, a terrorist, or a conspirator, stating that he preferred death to telling lies, and insisted his previous confession was obtained under torture. After the secret trial, Yezhov was allowed to return to his cell, but half an hour later, he was called back and informed he had been condemned to death. Upon hearing the verdict, Yezhov became faint and began to collapse, but the guards caught him and removed him from the room. His immediate appeal for clemency was denied, and Yezhov became hysterical, weeping. He soon had to be dragged out of the room, struggling with the guards and screaming. Nikolai Yezhov was 44 years old when he was shot by the future KGB chairman Ivan Serov on the 4th of February 1940. Yezhov's body was immediately cremated, and his ashes were dumped in a common grave at Moscow's Donskoye Cemetery. For a long time, his death remained a secret, and as late as 1948, there were reports such as in Time magazine suggesting that Yezhov might still be alive, and in an insane asylum. After Yevgenia's and Yezhov's deaths, Natasha was sent back to a local orphanage and was forced to relinquish the Yezhov surname. Due to his role in the Great Purge, Yezhov has not been officially rehabilitated by the Soviet and Russian authorities. And in Russia, Yezhov remains mostly known as the person who was responsible for the atrocities of the Great Purge that he conducted on Stalin's orders. There were no tears shed for Nikolai Yezhov. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.